disclosure and transparency is becoming more and more important part of this equation as companies are being asked to tell more and more. We report about disclosure, how much companies are disclosing. Talk about how you come to the disclosure metrics that we report.
So we spent quite a lot of time looking at what companies actually report. And quite a lot of companies do an excellent job at reporting. They create sustainability reports and they disseminate that to their stakeholders. And then there are other companies that have mainstream financial reporting, and they have, for example, in sections such as the MD&A, various different disclosures they're regulated to make. So what we did was we analyzed the companies that are reporting on environmental metrics. We analyzed where they're reporting on those metrics, whether it was in a separate report or as part of their filings, for example. And then for the remainder, we used other sources of information to try and calculate and extrapolate what environmental impacts might look like. So for example, for a mining company, if a mining company didn't report on its greenhouse gas emissions, then we would say, we would use other data sources, other secondary data, and say per ton of ore extracted in this type of location, for example, how energy intensive is that activity, and we would calculate greenhouse gas emissions from that energy intensity metric. So we did as best we could, if you like, from the public disclosures of companies, either taking those disclosures directly or where they were absent, extrapolating and calculating environmental impacts in the absence of that disclosure.
So let me run that back to you just because it's a little bit confusing.
Sure.
So you're looking at about 700 different metrics over about 5,000 companies.
Yeah.
About 1,600 we report in as global. In our report, subset 1,600 are to global, 500 for the US. But not all of those companies report all of those things. So you're looking at some subset of those that do report those, and when you don't have the information, or sometimes they don't report them directly, but you can find them through other means, some of the reports that they would file in the US, for example, at the Securities and Exchange Commission. And when you don't have that data and can't find it, you extrapolate it using some sophisticated analytics that you've created that may look, in the example of this mining company, does it matter if the operations, can you tell and differentiate if the operations are in Africa versus South America versus North America?
Yeah, so we've differentiated where we can get that information also on the locations. So for example, there's a very big difference between energy produced in, say, Canada versus energy produced in China. Difference in the grid mix, if you like, of electricity production. So if a company declares that the ore is mined in China, then we will use a Chinese factor where relevant. However, that, in terms of some of the reporting, it's highly aggregated, and that's fit for purpose perhaps for some investment procedures, but we would then have to go to a more globalized level, which clearly makes the analysis of a slightly less accurate nature.
So when we look at this data year over year, it's becoming more and more disclosed. In other words, more companies are disclosing a higher percentage of the information that you're looking for. That's a good news trend, and it's been going on for, I think, pretty consistently. Why is that happening?
It's happening because I think companies are being asked more frequently by their stakeholders to report on these issues because their stakeholders are understanding that some of these issues are material to the companies conducting their business. So it might be, for example, a request from investors directly, or it might be a request from organizations such as the Carbon Disclosure Project or other rating type organizations. There's a lot of different requests, and I think most sustainability managers have seen and observed the trend for lots and lots of requests for more information. What we actually found was that as of the latest analysis that we did, was that about a third of major US businesses create a separate report on environmental or sustainability issues. But interestingly, about 60% actually have the ability to provide data in addition to that report. So nearly double the amount that actually create a dedicated report have information, performance data that can be used by their stakeholders. And those disclosures go to places, as I said, like the Carbon Disclosure Initiative, but also to investors, to NGOs, to various other bodies that ask for this information.
Yeah, and the real metric here isn't how many companies are putting out reports, because reports, first of all, they differ widely in terms of how much they disclose, and we don't really know who reads them in the first place, but it's the amount of data that's available, reported, and now available on Bloomberg screens, hundreds of thousands of those screens that you can bring up information. And I think that seems to be a potential game changer.
It will be a game changer. I think what's going to happen in the future is the true view of both integrated reporting, but also mainstreaming of the investment process with respect to sustainability will be that portfolio managers will be able to make decisions at the coalface, at the point they make their decisions normally. They will have more information on that particular company relative to a competitor right at that point. And I think that will be the tipping point. So when you see capital allocated to companies that are more efficient as a consequence of their initiatives to improve their environmental performance relative to their peers, that will be a game changer. And that's already starting to happen. We've seen that the growth in responsible investing globally. This includes Asia as well, which is very interesting. And we've also seen that there have been a number of investment strategies that have not just excluded companies, but created new investment products to provide capital to companies that are more environmentally efficient. Now, why would they do that, really? They do that because these investors believe that the long-term financial value of a business will be higher if that business is more efficient environmentally.